is Jess from Cook Smarts. Today I want to talk to you about seasoning and learning to balance flavors in your dishes. One of the things that really takes you from being an average home cook to being a really great home cook is learning how to season your dishes. Clearly a recipe will guide you, but it really just takes a little bit of practice and your own intuition to figure out what you really like in a dish and how to really bring out all the flavors in a certain dish. There are basically 5 flavor profiles. We've got salty, we've got sweet, we've got spicy, we've got sour, and we've got bitter. And then there's apparently now a 6th category called umami, which is a little bit of another salty-like category. So we'll touch on all of those except for the bitter category, because most of the time you're not trying to make your dishes bitter for the most part. The first flavor profile I'm going to talk about is salty, because most likely you're going to be using salt in just about any dish that you're preparing. Salt is probably the most common seasoning we use. And I tell clients to always use kosher salt. I always keep a little bit of kosher salt by my side. And I always encourage people that even if a recipe doesn't tell you to salt, you should salt whenever you're adding an additional ingredient to the cooking process. If you're sauteing vegetables or stir-frying vegetables, as you add new ingredients, you should add a little bit of salt, which helps bring out the natural flavors of those ingredients, and it gives the dish time to build flavor. So I often say taste often throughout the process and add a little bit of salt as needed. It doesn't have to be all done at the very end. So kosher salt, it's the only salt you need. If you want to get all these fancy finishing salts, that's fine, but really kosher salt can do it all. In addition to kosher salt, though, there's a lot of other different things you can use to add saltiness or that kind of savory depth, umami flavor into the dishes that you're cooking. So I'm going to introduce a couple that I use. One is just soy sauce. So soy sauce is not really just for Asian cooking. You can use it in a lot of different dishes. When I'm marinating meats like a flank steak or a strip steak, I often use soy sauce as the base for the marinade. There's just so much salt packed into here and so much depth that this is a great thing to add to marinades, to soups, if you want to get a little bit more saltiness in there. So that soy sauce is great, but other things that I often use are, there's fish sauce. This is very common in Southeast Asian cooking. This is basically concentrated anchovies. Doesn't sound fantastic, and if you ever taste it by itself, it is disgusting. But when you add it to a soup or when you add it to a sauce or you add it to a curry, it just brings out it brings out all the other flavors and it adds a really great salty depth. So a teaspoon to a tablespoon of this can go really, really far. So experiment with this. Other things that I have along more of the Asian category are oyster sauce, another condiment that's common in Asian cooking that offers a lot of saltiness. So miso is another thing that I often turn to add saltiness to my cooking. I use this in a lot of marinades for roasted vegetables. Really adds a lot of depth. Other things, anchovies. Anchovies, super salty. Caesar salad dressing, mostly the salt is coming from anchovies. I've also got capers, offers a lot of salt in there. Sun-dried tomatoes are also really great for adding some saltiness. If you put this into a tomato sauce or a soup, you'll just really notice that the whole dish becomes a lot saltier. Other things that offer some salt, bacon. This is a huge chunk of bacon from the Midwest. So if you start off a dish with some, by rendering some bacon, by sauteing some bacon, you'll get a lot of salt in that dish from the get-go. And then there's Parmesan cheese. If you look at the ingredients label often in cheeses, you'll see that there's a lot of salt added in cheeses. So cheese does offer a lot of salt to a lot of pasta dishes, to bakes, all sorts of things. So this is another area where you can add flavor. So those are all items that I use very frequently in my cooking to add saltiness to my dishes. Don't feel like you need to go out and buy all of them. Starting out with a couple and experimenting to see how they change the saltiness profile of the dishes that you're making would be a great start. And if anything, just use kosher salt. So the second flavor profile I wanted to talk about was acids or sourness. People say, you hear this from chefs all the time, acid really brightens up the dish. But what exactly does that mean? Really what it means is it just provides a nice contrast to everything else, and it really brings out the other flavors in a dish. So often if you add a little bit of lemon juice at the end of your cooking, it doesn't matter what you're cooking, lemon juice or a couple drops of red wine vinegar, it actually does offer some great contrast to everything else that's in that dish and makes the whole dish come alive. I kind of say that acid tickles your taste buds and kind of yells at them to wake up, and therefore they're able to experience the dish in a really different way. So acids that I usually turn to, there's of course lemon. This is not just for fish. You can use this really to finish off any dish. People don't know this, but the reason why pasta is really good when you eat out is at restaurants, they usually finish a pasta dish with a squeeze of lemon juice. So always keep a lot of lemons handy. Find a neighbor with a lemon tree and make friends with them, because having lemons around is really useful in your cooking. Other acids that I use, and I keep quite a large repertoire of vinegars because I'm constantly making vinaigrettes, which serve not only as salad dressings, but as marinades and sauces for everything that I cook. So some of the most, I think, versatile acids to use or vinegars to use in your cooking, really to add a finish to it, are red wine vinegar, sherry vinegar is great, white wine vinegar. These are all things that you could actually add at the end of a dish, just a couple of drops. Definitely taste the before and after and see the difference. It's really interesting because it's something that's hard to describe, but once you experience it, you'll see why people do put acid at the end of cooking. And you should do it at the end of cooking, because a lot of times if you do it earlier, it actually, the power of it wears off. So do it towards the end when you're about to really finalize the dish. So this is the sour tart acid category. The next flavor profile I wanted to go to was sweet. Sweet is not just for desserts, just like salt can appear in desserts as well. So in order to create a really great balance of flavors in your dishes, it's important to have a little bit of saltiness, a little bit of acid, as well as a little bit of sweetness. The sourness, the tartness, and the sweetness kind of usually in most traditional dishes, not dessert-wise, are a little bit of, you don't add nearly as much as you would for salt. They're there just to create some contrast and to provide some balance to usually the saltiness of the dish. So one great thing about sweetness is that it really provides a nice balance to the tartness. If you were to make a vinaigrette and you just whisked vinegar and oil together and you took a taste of it, it would really make your mouth kind of pucker. And one way to counteract that is to really put in a little bit of sweetness. So I always put in a little bit of honey or maple syrup or agave nectar into my vinaigrettes, and it just really rounds it out so it doesn't cause that cringing taste in your mouth. One of the things that I use to add sweetness is brown sugar or white sugar. In Asian cooking, in Thai, in Vietnamese, in Chinese cooking, even in Japanese, sugar is added to most dishes, most savory dishes. When I learned to make fried rice from my parents, they said that I needed to put in sugar, and I said, there's nothing sweet about this dish. And they said, you do that to actually make the other flavors come out. So just try, you're not adding in any way the amounts that you would add in desserts. You're adding a teaspoon or so, spread across a really large dish. So it really does more, it's more there to add balance versus really to add sweetness. So brown sugar is something that I use frequently. Maple syrup is something I also often use in my dressings and my marinades. Even ketchup, there's a lot of sugar in ketchup. I wouldn't, eat ketchup that regularly, but a lot of cooking, Chinese cooking specifically, uses ketchup to flavor a lot of stir fries. Have you ever seen those red sauces in the dishes that you order in Chinese restaurants? Ketchup. And then jams. Jams are also really great to add sweetness. They've got a lot of fruity taste that have already been kind of pureed into this nice sauce, so they're really easy to incorporate into dressings, marinades, etc. I was with clients a couple weeks ago, and we made a pureed sweet potato soup, and we actually added a couple of spoonfuls of apricot jam, and it really, it enhanced the dish and brought a lot of additional sweetness to it. So those are the first three flavor profiles that I think every dish should have a little bit of. So play around with, putting things here and there and seeing how it changes your dishes. So most importantly is taste, taste, taste. Okay, and the fourth flavor profile that I'm going to talk about that I use pretty frequently in my cooking is spiciness or smokiness. This is definitely an optional flavor profile because I know that not everyone can handle a lot of spice, and some people like things super spicy, some people like things moderately spicy, but this is definitely a fun flavor profile to play with because there's just so many ingredients along the spectrum of spiciness and smokiness. Some things that I keep around in my kitchen that I use pretty frequently are my hot sauces. So I think this bottle of sriracha is probably used to be not so familiar in households, but I'm sure any household that does a significant amount of cooking probably has a bottle of sriracha. These used to be pretty much only in Vietnamese pho, like Vietnamese noodle restaurants, and now you see them in a lot of households. I've seen lots of dishes, lots of lists of 50 different ways you can use sriracha. So I throw these into noodles, I throw them into marinades, I throw them into stir fries, I throw them into my guacamole just to add a little bit of spice. This is like the cousin of sriracha. It's the same brand, it's the Rooster brand, but this has got garlic in it, so it's got both aromatics and spice. They're two more Asian styled spices, but it doesn't mean that they should only go in Asian cooking. They're just spicy things, so just use them in anything you like and just see how it goes. If you like spicy, you're probably going to like this in most of your dishes. So now you know the 4 different flavor profiles and different ways you can achieve getting those flavor profiles. Definitely don't feel beholden to the standard salt, lemon juice, and ground black pepper. Completely forgot about that as the most common use to add heat and spice. But feel free to experiment. So experiment often, taste often, and season with conviction. You're going to have a lot of fun in the kitchen, and you're not going to feel like you'll have to be a slave to recipes by any means, and you'll be creating some pretty tasty, well-balanced dishes very, very soon. Well, thanks for joining us. We always are aiming to help you live happier, simpler, and smarter in your kitchen.